been wanting you to be part of Mediator experiences for quite some time, but you haven't got the time to do that.
Yeah.
That is
So
about
today is the day, I guess. I couldn't find a time for earlier. But today I would like to give a brief information about Turkish system and also discuss about some challenges that we have. I'm not sure about how is the format. You are asking questions or we are presenting?
It's basically, let me tell you, for me, everything works the way mediation works. Organically, it can go wherever. It's your session. You take it the way you want to. No restrictions. Only the thing is, you'll have to give me 30 seconds to put out what we are doing here, so that at least people know what's the session. Just an idea. So this is what we're doing. Mediation legislation, the how, what, when, where, which, who, why of it. Question it. We have no restrictions. We can look at it the way based on experience and other things. 50 plus speakers now, 30 plus countries, and I hope we get more people. And then we have, of course, the information about what I do. I have to put it out again for 10 seconds, that mediatorvikram.com. Please go there and you'll find all the information what I do, all the events and all. You'll find information, World Mediation Circle and all, which Aşiyan, because we don't have too much time, we'll have another discussion on that. So Aşiyan, I'm done. All yours. Take it the way you want to.
Yes, and I can start a little bit about myself and how I get into the mediation world, because it's also related with the legislation process. I was a law student in my senior year, and I heard about mediation by an international presenter, and I was not happy about law faculty much, and I found it's a creative way talking the parties, and normally I was dreaming to become a movie director. And for the legal system, I had quite criticisms about why the parties as not leading roles, everybody kind of stealing role from each other, lawyers, judges, the laws, and the whole system, the parties' voices is not a part of the legal system. So when I heard about the mediation, I said, there's a point about it. And I started to search about, and there was first I got my training in Germany with an international group, but there was a project in Turkey at that time for Mediterranean region involving Turkey as well, by an international expert. But the idea was quite new, even for the government, for the people. Although I got my first training abroad, whenever I visited law firm or anybody, they were saying, "Oh, have you got any arbitration certificate? Or do you know about arbitration and mediation?" They don't want to interested in. But in 2 years apart, in between 2007 to 2009, there was a European Union project, first in making the base line for the framework, for the legal framework in Turkey. But it took almost nearly 8 to 10 years to develop that idea. In the meantime, I got international trainings, but this topic was still quite new for the Turkey. But finally, in 2012, there was a civil law on civil disputes, introduced mediation. Our main mediation law, that part, it was a basic law, nearly 30 to 35 articles, but quite good framework. It was based on Australian model, and it introduced with a voluntary-based mediation first. And at the beginning, there was a step forward to encouraging especially voluntary-based mediation. And we did several projects to encourage inform the public about mediation process. And after 5 years, we also in Turkey introduced mandatory mediation system. We followed it quite similar path with Italy, but made some adaptations according to Turkish structure. And for instance, when we are saying the mandatory mediation, it's not the whole process is mandatory. Only the first mediation meeting is for the encouragement of the parties is based on voluntary basis. And also for the parties are still free to continue the process or finalize the process according to their will. They only attend the 2 hours session by the mediator. And I said we made some differences with the Italian model. They have also first introductory meeting like us, but the government made a difference for the mediator's fee, especially in order to encourage the public to use about mediation. First, the session is free. There's no cost for applying to mediation, but also for if the 2 hours end without settlement, and the mediator's fee is paid by the government. So the fee of mediator wasn't an issue if there is no agreement. But if there's an agreement, the government say that, okay, the parties have benefit, then they need to pay about. So if there's there's a mediation session more than 2 hours, and also if there's a settlement, then parties should pay. So this was a good encouragement for the parties. And we see quite a high process in the high application rates, but also high settlement rates in the mediation process. The following year, the government follow up with the commercial disputes. And in 2020, we have mandatory mediation meeting for the consumer disputes. Now, upcoming in 2 years, we have rent disputes, neighborhood disputes, and land disputes are upcoming for the mandatory mediation system. And while we are looking the numbers, is why Turkish government is such a commitment to support the mediation system. First of all, not only the settlement rates were high, also the backlog. In Turkey, there are many cases waiting for the court for many years, but also it eliminates the cases. So many people think that they cannot get a result in court. They prefer to apply mediation because there is no fee, and they have a chance whether it can be a settlement over there. So the parties tried about it. And after the mediation session, some of them see that there's no point after the negotiation, so they didn't apply. So we see that the number of cases also fell down after the very first year. And also, as one of the good advantages about we started to make mandatory mediation system in labor disputes is every company, every person has once a time have labor disputes. So it was a good introduction for the government to introduce the system. As many companies learned about mediation during the process. And many lawyers learn about the mediation process during these meetings, as they need to attend about. Even there was a resistance at the beginning from lawyers, from companies, and they understand that there's a commitment from the government side, and it will continue like that. So we see that the perception change in not only in the public level, but also companies and lawyers point as well. And also for when we look to labor disputes, why the government selects to start about make it mandatory session I told you in between 2013 2018 there was a 5 years of period that government also recorded how many settlement and which type of cases done voluntary based mediation, and they realized that before make it mandatory there was nearly more than 30,000 cases resolved through mediation. It was a good number. And also they checked about the parties' comment. I mean, the government Ministry of Justice is main responsible body for the mediation. So they call the companies that attend voluntary-based mediation. They get feedback from the parties, and the settlement rate was nearly 99% of these voluntary cases. So they said that since there is a resource for us, and either than starting in the new area, let's start with the labor disputes. And this was a good starting point. And nearly the settlement rates were, by the end of first year, nearly 70%. So it was, again, high than even government's expectation. So the following years, when we looked about the numbers, especially for commercial disputes, are not as much as high with the labor disputes. But consumer disputes is quite similar also with the labor disputes. It's going well. And this also raised some questions why commercial disputes is not the same response getting for the labor disputes as well. This was a kind of in the challenges part I would like to discuss, because as I said, it has advantages mainly by legislation, make it legislation forcible for introducing parties to getting awareness. It has a good, it has advantages clearly, especially for the public side. But at the same time, when we look the numbers, especially statistics from Ministry of Justice, we have nearly more than 3 million cases right now settled through mediation. And we have, at the beginning, there was a quite small number of mediators, but now nearly 20,000 registered mediators, and newcomers within nearly 60,000 new mediators will register into system. So to control about the mediators and controlling about the trainings become an issue, because we were too fast for creating a demand from the public, and the demand come and the parties start to use. But when it's come to a mediator side, whether they are successful to conduct the mediation sessions or continue in the mediation process is a still question mark, because there are also, when the numbers increased about and to using the mediations, but also complaints increase to the Ministry of Justice side as well. But you were discussing with, I came for the last session, perception change. And in Turkey, the biggest perception change, it's happened in the lawyer side. I am also working with other countries as well. In many countries, the same reaction coming from the lawyer side. There's a strong resistance for lawyer side as well. And in Turkey, it happened as well. I said there was a 10 years of period the government was working on the legislation. So there was a campaign against mediation law. And so lawyers even put a red card for the conferences about mediation. In the very first years, and for the voluntary base, they don't want to attend the sessions. But when it's come to mandatory mediation, very at the beginning, again, the same reaction came from lawyer side as well. But on the other hand, the public find this is an effective way. I mean, with less cost, less time. So the companies see that there's a point to apply mediation for negotiation beforehand. So the more demand comes, the lawyers also started to interested in about the process. And also countries like Turkey and for legal system is within upcoming changes, it is hard to guess what is going to next. For the political, for the social change, for economical reasons, and there is lots of uncertainty. The same uncertainty applies for the lawyers as well. So they understand that this is a time for not just their clients and benefit, but for also for them to negotiate their fees, negotiate for their client base and solving the issue without waiting 3 to 5 years and with lots of uncertainty. It is an opportunity for many lawyers as well. Also for many young lawyers and also practicing lawyers, it gives a new profession. So everybody decided to get a mediator certificate, even they don't want to use, maybe they don't want to become a mediator, but they will continue represent the parties in mediation sessions. So they understand that they needed to know the system well in order to represent their clients as well. And also for the government side itself, for not just the parties, also for lawyers, there was a strong commitment within follow-ups, within first labor disputes and then commercial and consumer. So it is not a one-time change. So they understand that this system will use mediation effectively for the future as well. So that's why right now we are seeing high number of lawyers getting mediator certificate and apply profession as well. Of course, this has some downside as well for the government to increase the quality, responsibility for increasing the quality, monitoring and evaluating about the mediation cases as well. But also, since legal professions much more involved about the mediation system, there was also demand for the new law and also for much more articles to get it. When the mediation gets into the legal system, it's also some kind of to limiting itself as well. Regulation involved, the less you have a freedom as a mediator. Now I'm feeling as a mediator, it's turning into something different, because normally as a mediator, I don't have a role. I'm not a judge. I'm not involving as a decision maker. But the more it into mandatory mediation, the expectation from parties, from the laws, as mediator, much more in the decision taker role. So this is also creating a discussion, because there's mainly many countries, like also Turkey, advertised the mediation as legally binding solution, not like a negotiated agreement is marketed. Binding agreement at the end, enforceability is to encourage more and marketed more by the government side and for the lawyer side as well. But when it's come to a document, as I'm generally saying in the lectures, everyone can issue, notaries and other professions as well. If there is no negotiation involved, the agreement, even you make it enforceable, and it will create later on a problem as well. And most of the time, what I'm seeing in my sessions, if the parties are really happy about the outcome, they are not even looking for the mediation agreement. They apply immediately. This was first told me by British experts and American experts, that they come Turkey and explaining mediation process. And when we were in the legislation preparation, and they were saying why and you are insist on, the government is insist on the binding agreement. And I said, and they told me the same thing before I experienced mediation. Parties are applying immediately if there is a win-win situation. In most of the case, and especially I'm looking for the labor disputes in Turkey, and for the workers know that they need to sign the agreement in order to pay it. So there is one power imbalances, but also situation problems as well. So either than happily signing agreement by force, most of them, it's not forced by the mediator, but by the force for economical situation, for the social situation, they know that the court will take for a long time. So other than looking for their rights, they are looking for a quick solution, but most of time they don't want to sign if you ask their opinion. So this also creates a question mark about the content of the mediation agreements, whether really this is an access to justice for the parties, or they have no other solution. That's why they are going into the mediation process. So especially for many countries, it needs to be evaluated quite well, because it's marketed as access to justice, but it is not an aspirin, not giving a solution to every type of issue. So I believe that although I'm a mediator for a long time, but at the same time, I'm a rule of law expert. I know the deficiencies and potential risks of mediation as well. So we need to think about the parties, and we need to have a strong legal system in order to really establish a good mediation system as well. Without having a really good, well-established legal system, mediation have going and developing the same direction with the same problems. And right now, what is going on in the same, if there's an ethical issues in the legal practice with lawyers, with the judiciary, the same applies for the mediation as well, because who is doing the mediation session is the same legal profession. If you are not into really taught or well-established ethics, and mediation cannot work properly as well. So shortly, I try to explain what's going on in Turkey. I'm not sure whether it's fast or...
No, it's very good. Only thing is that for ASEAN, 30 minutes is not enough. I think I'll have to set up another session, part 2, because there is so much. First of all, the fact that there is so much activity that has happened in Turkey, we need to discuss it. But I think the important point which comes out, which I've been discussing earlier also, that basically the inefficiencies of the court system and that connection with mediation, because mandatory mediation for me is an oxymoron. Mandatory word used with mediation by itself, just that connection doesn't happen. And because of that, the foundation is not strong. Foundation is so weak. So we'll keep having those problems. Look, like you said, in those labor disputes, the fact that you don't have a choice because the courts are going to take time, so you settle. I don't call that mediation. For me, the word people might use for that as mediation, but for me, it's a gun on the head settlement. The mafia can do it, and this you're doing it in the same way. So I feel that the discussion should be for the judiciary to look at in some way becoming efficient. And for me, just stay away from mediation, because you are just going to create this environment where people are going to go back and say, I settled because there was no other option. So it's not that you came out happy from it. And if you did not come out happy from it, definitely word of mouth doesn't spread. And if word of mouth doesn't spread, the process doesn't take off. And for me, the process takes off when people actually okay, there you have mediators like you, and they have a good experience. They'll take that experience. But then the other side, you said power imbalances are there, so the finally the agreement will not be something that they are happy about. So I think those are issues which I have with mandatory, but that's a whole discussion by itself. But
Yeah.
important things are, Asian, first of all, look, I've been saying and I've been requesting everyone, let's not use the word parties. Let's use the word participants, because parties comes from the adversarial system of the
Yeah.
courts. So let's not give that feeling, that atmosphere in the mediation. So that's one request. But let's start with the basics. One is, let's look at things which are, of course, something not going to court. Let's just look at what people call private mediation. For me, that is the only mediation, but private mediation as such. How's the regulation, how's the legislation for that? Totally, which is something that you're not coming into court and you have to go for mandatory mediation before coming into court. Not that kind of mediation. Otherwise, people just want to mediate something and they want to resolve something otherwise. And right now, the matter is not something which is going to court. In that kind, is there legislation for that?
First of all, there is basically the law, and it's all covers the whole type of civil disputes. Only exception that we have, if there's a claim for domestic violence, parties cannot apply mediation. But other than this, every type of civil disputes can be resolved through voluntary-based mediation. So there is no barrier that parties can apply. But at the same time, some of the disputes, specifically like the labor disputes, commercial disputes, and consumer disputes, become mandatory. So if I have a case, it's a prerequisite, that commercial case, I need to apply for mediation first. But it is without, for instance, make it mandatory as during the COVID, there are lots of rent disputes. Right now, Turkish government is in preparation for make it mandatory. But before make it mandatory, the parties already approached me and get their rent disputes. So during the COVID, we made online rent disputes without really necessary to make mandatory law. But government believes that also for enforcing the parties, enforcing much more use about mediation, to make it mandatory first meeting is too efficient way to get the parties into the same table. So
but
I understand.
Yeah. No, please. You're saying something.
I understand also, to word of mandatory make it not suitable, maybe the voluntariness of the mediation process. But when I'm talking with the parties, I'm generally saying that, especially when it's come to a mandatory mediation session, they have nothing to lose. They only attending one negotiation session. So even they are not happy about the mediator or the process, the government pays. So this was a quite good advocation for us as a mediator. I use that for most of time. Lawyers were strong resistance to attend even mediation session. And I said, you will learn what the other parties say. You can make a preparation before the court. So it was a kind of convincing, and also maybe dealing with the resistance of the parties and also participants, and also for the lawyers as well.
I think the thing is, Aşiyan, there are lots of questions, lots of things you have to answer. So you'll have to give me another session. I'll send you the schedule. We'll create a slot for you, but there's lots to talk about, and Matt is here and we have to get him in because there's a lot about the criteria to be a mediator and all that has to be discussed with you. There has to be a part 2. And of course, that workshop is on the 19th. So let's fix up some time before that. And let's keep a long session because Turkey is an example where lots of activity has happened. Then we look at the Singapore Convention ratification, what's happening there. So lots to talk about. This is not complete. It's just we are concluding. If you want to conclude, your last words are yours. But we'll take up the session after that. So please.
Thank you for giving an opportunity for talking about Turkey, and I will be happy to join the workshop as well, and maybe give much more or share our experience. And I will give the floor to Matt, not for him to mate for.
Yeah, but one more session in the symposium has to happen before the workshop, Aşiyan. There is lots to discuss. So we'll fix up a time. So thank you very much. A pleasure speaking to you. And I'm